All right there, everyone. I am so excited to be talking today about cybersecurity and cancel culture. And I could not think of a better person to talk about this with than our guest today. I want to introduce you all to a good friend of our channel. That's Roy Bettle of Greybeard Security. Greybeard is a wonderful company. They're helping us right now really to become, in many respects, purge-proof and fight back against cancel culture. And they can do the same for you and for your business. So Roy, of course, we know each other, but why don't you introduce yourself to everyone? Because you're a complicated guy. You do some pretty wild cyber security stuff that goes beyond my expertise here. Why don't you give us a rundown of who you are and what you do?
Well, thank you, Dr. Steve. I appreciate that. I'm going to do everything I can today to take to heart the number of times somebody's raised a hand and goes, could you say that again in English?
Yeah. I'll put it down.
But yeah, we are Greybeard Security. We're a cybersecurity firm whose team members average nearly 30 years of actual experience.
Wow.
No recent college graduates. That's actually why we named the company Greybeard, because all of us have gray beards and we've earned every hair. I also want to take a moment to point out, as we're getting started here, especially in light of today's subject, that we are optimists and we have a very hopeful outlook for the future. The challenge is that we know that there's a lot of bumpy road right now, and there's going to be bumpy road for a while. And that's why we're working on sounding the alarm. Not because we're alarmists, not because we're trying to be dramatic, but because there's some really bad stuff going on, right, and people need to be aware of it. And you guys found out yourselves some of the things that are going on. And I wanted to mention that because this is a dark subject, but it's not insurmountable. There are ways to get protected. It doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. There are ways to find safe harbor, and we can help you do that.
So from the cybersecurity perspective, what is cancel culture? What's really going on there?
In a word, betrayal. Seriously. Everybody already knew that bad guys do bad things on the internet, right? In fact, in 2020, we saw a greater than 600% increase in the number of cyber attacks over 2019. 600%.
Wow.
As of today, second quarter of 2021, we're up over 1,000% versus what it was in 2019. That's a 10-fold increase in cyber attacks. But everybody already knew that the internet's not a safe place to play to some extent. And that's why, you get antivirus applications, you get a firewall, IDS, IPS, all this other technobabble that I'm not going to spout. So people were aware of that. The really insidious thing about cancel culture is that now folks are having to worry about people that they thought were good guys. Domain registrars, web hosts, merchant account providers, payment gateways, shopping cart services, cloud hosting providers. The list goes on. Those are the ones that you're in contracts with and you're paying your bills every month. And all of a sudden they cut you off, claim that you violate their terms of service. And at the end of the day, we find it interesting that everybody that's getting cut off is conservative.
Right.
So the fact is that as a culture, we're not very secure on the internet in the first place. Statistically, more than 50% of all networks globally get hacked every year.
Wow.
More than 50%. And anybody can take 5 minutes in any search engine and find that out for themselves. The information's out there. Every FBI, Interpol, they all have the statistics up there. You can find it out yourself. But now the exposure has grown exponentially because of the COVID lockdown, which is why you're seeing this huge spike in attacks around the world, because folks that used to go to an office building and sit behind the corporate firewall and all the rest of the stuff, well, now they're working from home on less protected or in fact fully untrusted network connections.
Right.
So that's why you're seeing this exponential growth, because the CEO that used to work from the corporate offices is working out of his home office. And so that's going on, right? And now the supposed good guys are starting to act the same way as the bad guys. And the really nasty thing about the good guys is they don't have to hack you because they own the platform and services that you're using. So they just point and click and you're out of business. Suddenly it's no longer enough to protect yourself from the bad guys that you already knew about. Now you have to protect yourself from the people that you thought were good guys, because cancel culture is now in full swing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's infuriating, guys, and we've been victims of this. How can they do this? I mean, is this legal? I mean, it seems so absurd.
Well, actually, no, it's not legal. That's why you're seeing, for instance, the Russian Federation recently won a lawsuit against Google,
Right.
and Google is now required by the Russian court to restore this person's YouTube channel. Whether they'll do it or not, we'll see.
Right.
But here's the thing. Have you actually ever read a service provider's acceptable use policy or terms of service? Statistically, most people don't.
Right.
You sign up for whatever you signed up for, and you give them the credit card info and all that kind of stuff, and you have the submit button, and right next to the submit button, there's an acceptable use policy, terms of service, some sort of language like that, and wording that if you click submit, you're agreeing to be bound by those policies. Well, if you read those policies, there's enough gray area in there to drive a Mack truck through sideways. And all of their stuff is very, very subjective. And if you really sit down and digest it, you give an acceptable use policy to your attorney and have him analyze it, and he's like, I'd never signed this thing. Right. Because essentially the AUP says they can kick you off the service for anything they want to kick you off the service for, which is a violation of multiple portions of multiple laws in multiple countries, which is why they're starting to lose lawsuits. But we'll get to that in a minute.
Right.
And that's what cancel culture is. Cancel culture at its root is an attack on free speech, which is guaranteed in the Constitution. Right. So when they attack you over something you said, regardless of their policy, it's actually illegal. And that's why they're starting to lose some of these lawsuits, which is a good news, bad news thing. Sure, you can fight them and ultimately win, but in the meantime, you're out of business, and it'll cost you, however many thousands of dollars and months of downtime to win the lawsuit. In fact, when you guys got hit, one of your people reached out to me and said, do you know any attorneys that specialize in fighting these kinds of lawsuits? And I told him, I said, look, I said two things. The attorney doesn't want to be victimized by cancel culture either.
Right.
So if you could find somebody who would take your case, it's going to take you tens of thousands of dollars, and it's going to take you months and months and months to actually win the lawsuit, because you will win it eventually. And then they have to reinstate you. I said, why don't you take a fraction of that money and have us fix your enterprise so they can't do this to you anymore? And here we are. Right. Because what's really going on, and you're seeing this as well from the stuff that you're, what's going through Turley Talks, is that people's stances on the issues of the day are being used to sanction and suppress their ability to use the internet to do business by the very organizations that are providing the very products and services that they are using to do business on the internet. This is accomplished in part, and we'll get to this a little bit later too, through a huge cataloging effort that's been going on for a number of years to create a database of off-topic people, dissidents, if you will. All right. It's being called cancel culture. That's the buzzword, or catchphrase, I should say, but it's really applied cultural Marxism. People's livelihoods are being attacked because they love America, stand for its ideals, and being attacked for that, that's evil. Yeah. And like we were talking about a second ago, we do have a legal system that will hopefully eventually defend us. But in the meantime, the bad guys can do evil stuff in the blink of an eye, and it can take you months and thousands of dollars to get justice. Right. Which is why we're doing this. It's why we're sounding the alarm. It's why we're saying, hey, you're seeing this happen. Do you really want to get to the point that your business is down and you're now going to spend 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 to get yourself reinstated? Or do you want to get ahead of this and it just never happens to you in the first place? That's why we call ourselves the cure for cancel culture, because we take somebody's systems, whatever they're using on the internet to earn a living, and we move those systems beyond the reach of big tech, because that is possible. That's why I said in the beginning, we are optimists, because we've been doing this for so long. We actually do know how to take an organization like, for instance, Turley Talks, and pull you out of the big tech infrastructure and move you into a position where you can do business the way you want to do business. And you don't have to worry about somebody, as happened to you, invading your catalog, deleting a bunch of your content, and then freezing your merchant account because I almost used some non-vegetarian language. I caught myself. We'll say some twit somewhere decided they didn't like one of your t-shirts.
Right. Right. Well put. Well
That was
put.
close. There was almost a non-vegetarian word there. It was,
Well put. Oh my. But
uh,
I mean, you do bring up a great point, because obviously, so from I'm gathering from what you're saying, this is cancel culture does not simply apply to a YouTuber like myself. This is something that's systemic, isn't it? For anybody who has politically incorrect beliefs, this is eventually something that's going to affect them.
we're only a couple of months into this. So cancel culture isn't new. Cancel culture has been around. When was the first time we dealt with some of this? It was about 10 years ago, I think, when we first really started seeing some of this stuff start to bubble up. But it's shifted into fifth gear now with the deplatforming of Parler. That was
Yeah.
I refer to it as the shot heard around the world.
Yeah.
Because you have all of these pissed off gender studies majors that are living in their parents' basement, and there's this ecosystem, this thought structure out there, which is being actively promoted by certain people, which we'll get into a little bit later, and they are committed to changing the world. They don't care what you think. They don't care what you feel. It's your individuality, your ability to be who you want to be, to say what you want to say, to live how you want to live, is not important to them. In fact, it's the opposite of what they want. So they have this thought construct, this ecosystem, this organization, and all of these people are starting to do some things, and we're starting to see different trends in the internet, on the cybersecurity side of things. But when Parler got deplatformed, that was the big tech oligarchs announcing to this cultural Marxism movement, game on, boys. And what we've seen since then is, I hesitate to use the word exponential, because that implies that we're at the peak of the acceleration, but we're not. But we're seeing thousands of people and companies and so forth getting hit, and it's picking up steam.
Who's getting hit? Who's at risk here?
Well, everyone, conservative, liberal, whatever you are, everybody's at risk from the known bad guys, right? The ransomware, denial of service, website injections, server compromises, and so on and so forth. You know, the stuff that was already going on that everybody knew about. This is why you bought a firewall, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knew about that. For cancel culture, bluntly, anyone who has an opinion that is in opposition to the agenda is in danger of suppression and sanctions, which is, over half the country voted for Trump. So that's a huge list. And this is not just a US thing. We're seeing cancel culture around the globe. So I took some notes here to try to keep myself on the rails. If I went into the long list of all the people that we've seen get canceled, this would be a very long interview. So I tried to break it down a little bit into, so I apologize if I'm reading off the screen up here. I tried to break it down into some, like the verticals, if you will, where we're seeing the most stuff happening right now. Conservative politicians, whether you are running for office in 2022 or not. I'll put it this way. If you thought 2020 was rough, 2022 is going to be a bloodbath. Wow. Just wait. Because how does a politician do their job? It's through influence.
Right.
Okay. So wouldn't it be a shame, whether you're running for office or not running for office, just trying to do the job that you already have? Wouldn't it be a shame if you all of a sudden couldn't communicate with your constituents or receive donations?
Wow.
That might be a little interruptive. Yeah. But that's the stuff that we're starting to see happen. And I love that Ron DeSantis came up with the stuff he just came up with. I think that's awesome. I think every state should do that. Just let me pause that for a second. The people behind this are mega billionaires. $25,000 a day or $250,000 a day to stop you from being able to win an election in a market where they've decided their person's going to win.
Right.
That's a rounding error in an office supply budget.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's what they spend on pencils. Yeah.
Right. I mean, these guys fly around in private jets. You know, they go from East Coast to West Coast. They'll burn 200 grand in avgas. You know, whatever. Another thing, Christian organizations. We're seeing this a lot. This is where we're probably seeing the most hits right now. And it's easy to just say churches and just leave it at that. And a lot of churches are getting hit. But there's a lot of other organizations out there professing Christ that are also getting hit or going to get hit because the Christian underpinnings, the Judeo-Christian underpinnings of American society is where a lot of the focus is right now. So organizations that feed the homeless, sober living, detox centers, healthcare providers, health insurance providers. If you are an organization that's professing Christ, you're in the center of the cross.
Yeah, pro-life organizations particularly.
Yes, definitely pro-life organizations. And I would say just a little fraction below is alternative educators. Because the strength of this cultural Marxist movement begins in kindergarten. Okay, that's where the indoctrination starts. So if you're a charter school, if you're a Christian school, if you're a trade school, etc., if you're not teaching the agenda, you're a target. Right. Because in order for them to get done what they're trying to get done, they need a lot of really angry people. And somebody who just spent $250,000 or $100,000 or $50,000 to get a gender studies major, which qualifies them to move back home, is going to be pissed off and more easy to manipulate. Somebody who actually has marketable skills is going to be busy using them.
Right.
Okay. So if you're an alternate educator, you're in the crosshairs. This is another big one, alternative medicine practitioners. Okay. Big pharma is a huge source of funding for the agenda. So if you're, if you're providing alternate remedies of any kind, if you're an anti-vax person,
yeah, forget about it. Right.
We found out this week that it just bubbled up to the surface because sooner or later the truth always comes out. 12 state attorney generals have openly asked big tech to censor any and all conversations that have anything to do with the COVID vaccinations. So if you're in some sort of business that is in opposition to that, you are in the crosshairs. I would also say big tech alternatives, because they don't want you going after their cash register. So like Mike Lindell's mystore.com, stuff like that, those guys are in for a huge fight. Right. High net worth private citizens. This is not one that is necessarily as obvious, but there's some really insidious stuff being done to high net worth private individuals. And conservative producers, content producers. And you, of course, are personally familiar with that. If you're speaking out truth, if you're against the agenda, you're going to get canceled. That's what happens. And what I tell people all the time is that if you're concerned that you might be at risk, you probably are. And I'll tell you why. Everyone has a spidey sense, right? When danger's around, whether you see it or not, your spidey sense tingles. Oh yes, I forgot about that. That's some other notes over here. And actually social credit scores, I'll get to that in a second. But to close out just this one point without, spending 2 hours, I would tell you that if you've made it this far in the video, your spidey sense is probably tingling.
It's a good point. Good point. Give us a sense too of some of the empirical elements, the evidential elements of this. I know one of the things I read about is a bit of a scandal at the post office that I'm sure you're aware of.
Yeah. So Publicly, there have been some things that have happened that the media has chosen to tout as grand successes of a progressive culture. The canceling of President Trump, deplatforming Parler, what they did to you was celebrated in certain circles. Those are public events that the media pumps up because it continues to inform the soldiers that the war is still on, keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
The private attacks are much more difficult to find out about, unless of course it happened to you, because the media is in collusion with the cancel culture effort and they're not going to tell on themselves. But to your point, the one piece of very damning evidence, for those that understand how all these things kind of interconnect, is that it's come out that the US Postal Service has been cataloging everyone's social media posts. It's been going on for several years. I don't know how they come up with the jurisdiction to do that in other countries, but in any event, the US Postal Service has been cataloging everyone's social media posts for a number of years now. And here's the funny part. All that information has been going to the Department of Homeland Security and others.
Mm.
They don't specify who the others are. Okay. So this is documented truth. This isn't some, conspiracy theory, whatever, I need to go get my tinfoil hat. You can, any search engine, look for ICOP or the Internet Covert Operations Program. This is funded by our tax dollars. Isn't that nice? We funded the government hiring private agencies, which was the US Postal Service, and there were some others as well, but the Postal Service did most of it, to go out and literally ingest everybody's social media posts, catalog them by individual, and now each of us has a file with the Department of Homeland Security and others about our social media posts. If that doesn't concern you, whew. And here's the thing too, what they're looking for is they're looking for people who love America.
Wow.
Because you're a dissident.
You're right. Right. Yeah. The terms that some scholars are using now, it's America versus post-America. The two populations right now are those who still have faith in the institutions of our nation, and those who relish in a world, the thought of a world where America is no more. Yeah. So what's the real danger in all of this when all's said and done?
Well, it depends on several things. And one of them is how successful you are, and not just from the perspective of your ability to sway somebody's opinion on social media, but in particular, how successful you've been at life and business and so forth, because individual success, which is a manifestation of individual liberty, is a problem for the agenda. So they're working on stamping all of that out, and they're using cancel culture as what I call the tip of the spear. How cancel culture manifests, I mean, it can be different for different people. When you, for instance, one of our customers, they were with the same web host for about 3.5 years, never had any problems. Within 30 days of Parler getting deplatformed, all of a sudden their web server can't stay up. Now, they're a conservative online newspaper. So if their web server's not up,
Right.
Nobody's reading their content.
Right.
Their advertisers aren't getting any CPM. So their business is shut down when their website is not running. And that's just one example. Freezing your merchant account. You may be familiar with that. Poisoning your analytics, deranking your web page, infecting your systems with ransomware, deleting your content, outright deplatforming you. We don't want your business anymore. Take your stuff and go. All of that stuff's going on right now.
Wow. What about, so I know you're familiar with the whole notion of techlash, what scholars, that new phrase scholars have coined. What do you see as the prospects for that in terms of being able to correct this?
Well, greybeard is techlash.
You're right. You are certainly on the front lines of techlash. That's for sure. Well, why did you explain to people what techlash is?
Okay. So before I do that, I want to preface my comments by saying that there is hope. That's true. But it can be dangerous to confuse hope for the future with current reality.
Okay, great.
Right.
Yeah.
So techlash is a catchphrase that's being used to describe the effort of fighting back against big tech and their power plays. Some victories have been seen. President Putin winning a lawsuit against Google, and more will be seen. But there's a really long ways to go. We live in the Northeast. Okay, so you've seen these giant cedar trees and pine trees and so forth up here. I like using the cedar example because we've got one in the yard. You get these trees, they're like 75, 80 feet tall, and the base, the trunk is like, I mean, it's like 6, 8 feet around. I mean, it's a huge trunk. So where techlash is at right now is it's kind of like somebody with an axe and they just did that first.
Okay. Right.
Okay. Can we take the tree down? Yes, we can. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take thousands of lawsuits. It's going to take millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's a big effort because these are very big companies. But techlash can win because fundamentally, if people vote with their feet, they don't have any power. That's how it works. You have to vote with your feet. Right. It's frustrating to leave Facebook and go to Gab or MeWe or whatever. But if you don't do that, there's no techlash.
Right.
Techlash. The thing I also tell people is that big tech, big companies, multi-billion-dollar international conglomerates, Antifa, BLM, funded by big tech, and all these other social justice mobs, they're not just going to go away. They're guys in the White House, and we have several dozen riots going on right now. They got their guy in the White House.
Right.
And it's still going on.
Right.
Behind all of this is what some people I've heard referred to as a fourth branch of government. Okay. This is this group of mega billionaires that really do believe that they know better than we do how we should live our lives. Okay. They really do. It's important to realize that they really do. They are fully invested in their belief system. I mean, for Pete's sake, Bill Gates is trying to figure out how to fill the atmosphere with metallic particles to dim the power of the sun.
Yeah, the Brazilian philosopher Olavo de Carvalho calls them the syndicate.
Yeah, well, that's what they are.
Right.
This is a
great phrase, the syndicate.
Make no mistake.
Yeah.
Some smart lawyer with giant brass ones is going to realize that this is a RICO case. Just hasn't happened yet. They are a syndicate. There's no question. So anyway, this is the current reality. Okay. Let's say you're what the government calls a small business. Again, so is there hope for the future? Yes. But this is the current reality. Let's say you're a small business, which the government defines as 1,500 employees or smaller. So that's the vast majority of companies across the fruited plain. What do you do when one of the big tech elephants or a mob of social justice warriors decides to take you out? Right. It's one thing, like we've been discussing, for President Putin to take on Google. What are you going to do? Cancel culture players are starting to lose lawsuits, and that's true. But here's the thing. Let's say that they take you out, and let's say that you sue them, and let's say that you win. And then you get a court order that they have to reinstate you. And after some period of time, months, whatever, they actually do. How much time and money did you lose?
Yeah, right.
Okay. There's a lot of companies out there right now that this COVID lockdown thing, they're hanging on by a thread. And to all of you, my question is, how many months can you be down? That's the question we're asking. It's like, man, it's heartbreaking. You just don't even know. It is just heartbreaking. It's like we say in our video, the best way to block a punch is not be there when it lands. So our goal, Greybeard's goal, is to pull folks to safety so they don't get hit.
Yeah, so with that's a perfect lead in. So what does Greybeard do to help? I know we've had some experience with you guys and how you've helped us. What does Greybeard do here for people who are obviously at this part of the video, their spidey senses is going crazy right now? How are you bringing in a little light into this darkness?
Well, the 21st century is a very connected world. right? We can buy everything from doorbells to refrigerators to thermostats and much, much more that are all internet connected.
Right.
I still haven't figured out the logic behind a refrigerator that's internet connected, but whatever.
Yeah.
It can tell you when the milk is out of date. I have a 14-year-old boy. Our milk never makes it that far.
That's right. Ours doesn't either.
Yeah. So greybeard is not a magic bullet for all aspects of cancel culture. Okay. I want to make that very clear. But, and this is important, if the internet is an important part of how you make a living, we are able to protect your use of it to make a living. Whether that's a website, internet-based scheduling system, merchant accounts, shopping cart services, email systems, customer relationship management platforms, remote collaboration systems, email and SMS marketing systems, content and hosting. If it runs on or over the internet, we can protect it for you. That's how we can help you. I can't do anything about somebody, getting mad at you in Facebook because you said what. I can show you how to delete and block them.
Right.
But I can't, we can't help you with that stuff.
Right.
And we're not even going to try.
Right.
What we're here to do is we're here to protect your livelihood. I can't do anything about the rest of it.
Right.
But I can protect that.
Right. You're dealing with the fundamentals, right?
Yes.
So how do you protect people's web presence in general?
Okay. That's a very good question too. Everyone's use of the internet is unique to a certain degree with respect to their personality, corporate culture, business model, et cetera, et cetera. So the only thing we've ever found that worked is a personalized approach. We're not the one and done type organization. We're personally involved with somebody that engages with us all the way through the process, because everybody's use of the internet is different. One of the unique aspects that we developed nearly 20 years ago is a very specific kind of global hosting infrastructure, and it is global. We can host anything. And the interesting thing about our infrastructure, we built it almost 20 years ago for a customer who's still with us today, that they had some intellectual property that the Chinese wanted really badly. And so Chinese sponsored state cyber terror organizations were just brutalizing this guy's company. And he came to us and said, is there anything you can do? And we're like, I don't know. Let's find out. So we wound up building this infrastructure that in nearly 20 years, and this is whether you understand cybersecurity or not, please hear me right now. In close to 20 years, we have never been hacked.
Wow.
Not once.
Wow.
We have never been taken offline. We have never been infected with ransomware. We have never bowed to a distributed denial of service attack. We have never in almost 20 years. And
wow, that's so cool.
Not to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty proud of that.
That is so cool. Wow.
So the way people get started finding out more about how all this works, you go to cure4cancel.com, CURE, 4cancel.com. There's some more information up there. Like I said, it is a personalized approach. It has to be, because everybody's network is a little bit different from everybody else's network. So there's no one size fits all solution for this stuff. But we do know, and I hope you hear me, we are really good at protecting your use of the internet to earn a living.
Before we close, Roy, you do offer a free dark web scanner on your site. Can you elucidate on that? I think that's the coolest phrase, the dark web scanner. What is that, and how does that help?
Well, we offer that service for free so folks can get a taste of just how much their information actually has been stolen over the years. Really don't want folks to get a false sense of security from that system, as it's only intended to illustrate that your information has been stolen. The thing about the real dark web, this is every time somebody asks me about dark web scanners, I just start laughing, because the real dark web doesn't live on the internet. It's a global collection of other systems. Some of them specialize in really dark, illegal stuff. Well, it's all illegal, but some of them will specialize in mortgage payment histories. Some of them will specialize in title databases that have been invaded. Some of them are credit cards, DNA. DNA information is incredibly valuable on the dark web, which is why every time somebody goes, I went to 23andMe, I'm like, oh, you idiot. If you really think, okay, so just a little segue. A DNA sequencer from soup to nuts, one sequencer, is around $120 million. So do you think that they plan to capitalize $120 million expenditure, to say nothing of the people that actually run it, salary and all the rest of that stuff, off $50 DNA sequencing? They're selling your stuff, FYI. And all of this basically is to say that the majority of dark web scanners, to include our own, are just scanning databases that compare your information with known breaches in which your data has been identified to some degree as having been compromised. What is most valuable about these scanners is helping people understand that you have been compromised. Your life has been hacked to whatever degree it's been hacked. And the information that was stolen is available to anyone who wants to use it. Actually protecting yourself starts with an assessment. And that goes back to my earlier comments about everybody's network's a little bit different. Everything starts with an assessment.
Right. Right. Yeah, I remember you giving us precisely that chat when we came to you originally, that you had to give an assessment. It's a very unique thing. But so what? Just I mean, are we talking hundreds of thousands of dollars here? I mean, a lot of people don't know the cybersecurity world. What? Just give us at least a sense, ballpark, of what the costs involve to do things like this.
Okay. When somebody asks me what the cost of an assessment is, I liken it to asking me how long a piece of string is, because your network is whatever it is, and we don't know what it is. Everyone's network is different, size, scope, complexity, all these different things that factor into the cost of the assessment. We have assessments going on right now that range from under $1,000 to over $10,000. It literally is driven by the complexity of your network.
Right.
What we are doing right now is we're significantly discounting the assessment bundle, because that's the other thing I want to make sure people realize is this is 3 services in one. Now, we didn't do one of the services for Turley because y'all had already made the decision you wanted to jump, so there was no need to do the penetration test. But the first thing that we do with somebody for an assessment is a penetration test. We have a database of literally hundreds of thousands of known threat vectors and a series of tools that we run against your network. I cannot possibly express how critically important this is, because the statistics are terrifying. Over 84% of all networks on the planet have critical vulnerabilities in them, 84%. And that's part of that greater than 1,000% increase in cyber attacks since 2019. So the first thing we do is we run a penetration test against your network to find out where you're vulnerable, and that's part of the assessment report. The second part of the assessment report is the big tech assessment. We have a database of hundreds of companies that are known to engage in cancel culture activities. And so we query your infrastructure to find out what products and services you're using that are provided by these known bad actors. And then there's a roadmap to safety. Now we know the weaknesses in your network, we know the big tech services that you're using, and we provide a roadmap to safety that uses alternate configurations or alternate products altogether, alternate platforms, whatever the case may be, so that you are protected from all of this nasty stuff that's going on right now. And I'd also like to tell people that, and you guys are finding this out now too, as we're going through this process. People get into big tech, you build your web presence, whatever that means, the same way everybody does. Okay, you want a content provider, you want to host your content. Well, where do you go? Well, I'm not going to say names in the video because duh, everybody knows. And so you go there, and you want to use a shopping cart service. So where do you go? Again, I'm not going to say any names, but people go to these services because the big tech companies behind them have the multi-million-dollar marketing budgets necessary to make sure you know about them.
Mm-hmm.
So you go there. What you don't realize is that there are dozens of alternative platforms that you could use that don't have the multi-million-dollar marketing budget. So how can they compete? They compete on price. So when we shift somebody away from big tech, they actually wind up saving money on their operations.
Right.
Like I said, we're part of techlash.
Right. Right. You certainly are, man. Wow. You are. You're right on the front lines. And I want to repeat for everyone, you know, we're so excited to be in a partnership with Roy and with Greybeard Security to help render us as purge proof as possible. And I know that they can do the same for you and for your business. Roy, one more time, what's your website where people can get some more information?
www.cure4cancel.com. CURE, 4cancel.com.
And I want to compliment you because I understood everything. Did you notice my hand didn't raise once?
Well, I had to, hopefully people will forgive me for occasionally glancing up, but I have a script on a monitor behind the camera just to make sure I stay in English. You
achieve that. Even a layman like me can go, wow, I get this stuff. It's amazing. Awesome. Thanks so much for everything that you're doing to protect faith, family, and freedom. Roy, you are a true patriot, and you are very appreciated. God bless you, brother.
God bless you as well. Thank you, Dr. Steve.